Beneath the azure waters of the Mediterranean Sea, buried under layers of volcanic ash and centuries of forgotten memory, lies one of history's most enigmatic civilizations, a culture so advanced, so sophisticated, so utterly mysterious that scholars still debate its true nature more than a century after its rediscovery. This is the story of Minoan Crete, where myth and reality intertwine like the serpents coiling around the priestess's arms, where legend speaks of a monstrous Minotaur lurking in an impossible labyrinth, and where archaeological evidence reveals something perhaps even more extraordinary than fiction could imagine. The year is 1900, and a wealthy British archaeologist named Arthur Evans stands before a hillside on the island of Crete, convinced that beneath the Mediterranean soil lies proof of a civilization that predates classical Greece. A culture whispered about in Homer's epics but dismissed by most scholars as pure fantasy. With pick and shovel, with determination bordering on obsession, Evans begins to dig, and what emerges from the earth will rewrite everything humanity thought it knew about the birth of European civilization. The first walls appear, then corridors, then rooms upon rooms upon rooms, a sprawling complex so vast and intricate that Evans immediately thinks of the ancient Greek legend, the story told by Ovid and Plutarch, the tale of King Minos who commissioned the master craftsman Daedalus to build an inescapable maze to contain the Minotaur, a creature born from divine punishment and human hubris, half man and half bull, fed on the flesh of Athenian youth until the hero Theseus arrived to slay the beast and escape using a thread given by the king's daughter Ariadne. Evans names his discovery Knossos, identifying it as the legendary palace of King Minos, and though modern archaeologists would later question some of his interpretations and controversial reconstructions, there is no denying the magnitude of what he unearthed. Evidence of a civilization that flourished between approximately 2700 and 1450 BCE, during what we now call the Bronze Age, a society that built multi-story palaces with sophisticated plumbing systems, created art of stunning beauty and originality, developed one of the world's earliest writing systems, and established a maritime trade network that connected Egypt, the Near East, and the far reaches of the Mediterranean world. But who were these people, really? The term Minoan is itself a modern invention, coined by Evans from the legendary King Minos, for we do not know what these ancient people called themselves. Their writing systems, Linear A and the earlier Cretan hieroglyphics, remain largely undeciphered, keeping their voices silent across the millennia, leaving us to piece together their story from their material remains, from the fragments of their art, from the ruins of their cities, and from the often unreliable accounts of later Greek writers who may have preserved distorted memories of this vanished world. The origins of the Minoans remain shrouded in mystery and scholarly debate. Genetic studies suggest they were descendants of Neolithic farmers who arrived on Crete around 7000 BCE, peoples who had migrated from Anatolia, bringing with them the agricultural revolution that would transform human society, cultivating wheat and barley, herding sheep and goats, and slowly building permanent settlements that would evolve over millennia into something unprecedented. Crete itself, the largest of the Greek islands, stretches approximately 160 miles from east to west, a mountainous spine rising from the sea, creating fertile valleys and natural harbors that would prove ideal for the development of a sophisticated maritime culture. The island's strategic position at the crossroads of three continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa, placed it at the heart of Bronze Age trade routes, allowing the Minoans to access tin from Afghanistan, copper from Cyprus, ivory from Syria, gold from Egypt, and countless other valuable commodities that flowed through their ports. The early development of Minoan civilization, roughly 2700 to 1900 BCE, known to archaeologists as the prepalatial and protopalatial periods, saw the gradual emergence of social complexity, the accumulation of wealth, the specialization of labor, and the construction of increasingly impressive architectural structures. Villages grew into towns, towns developed into regional centers, and these centers began to construct the first palaces, administrative, and religious complexes that would become the defining feature of Minoan culture. The great palaces of Crete, Knossos, Phaistos, Malea, and Zakros were not fortresses in the traditional sense, lacking the massive defensive walls that characterized contemporary Near Eastern cities. This absence of fortifications has led scholars to propose various theories, some suggesting the Minoans enjoyed a long period of peace protected by their naval supremacy, others arguing that their decentralized political structure made large-scale defensive works unnecessary. Still others, pointing out that later discoveries have revealed some defensive features that earlier archaeologists missed or dismissed. Knossos, the largest and most famous of the Minoan palaces, covered approximately 150,000 square feet. A sprawling complex of over 1,300 rooms arranged around a central courtyard, connected by corridors that twisted and turned in a manner that might indeed seem labyrinthine to the uninitiated. The palace featured multiple stories, light wells to illuminate interior rooms, elaborate drainage systems complete with terracotta pipes, flushing toilets that would not be matched in sophistication for millennia, storage magazines filled with enormous pithoy jars containing oil, wine, and grain, lustral basins thought to be used for ritual purification, residential quarters decorated with magnificent frescoes, and workshops where artisans produced goods ranging from fine pottery to intricate jewelry. The architectural sophistication of Minoan palaces reveals a society with advanced engineering knowledge. Columns tapered downward in a distinctive style, inverted from the classical Greek norm, painted bright red with black capitals, creating a striking visual effect. Walls were constructed using ashlar masonry techniques, precisely cut limestone blocks fitted together without mortar, while upper stories often employed timber frame construction with rubble fill, a technique that provided flexibility during earthquakes, which were common in this seismically active region. The Minoans were master artists whose work displays a naturalistic style, a joy in life, and an aesthetic sensibility that sets them apart from their contemporaries in Egypt and Mesopotamia. The famous frescoes from Knossos and other sites depict a world of vivid color and dynamic movement, showing dolphins leaping through waves, blue monkeys gathering saffron, elegant ladies with elaborate hairstyles and fashionable clothing, bull-leaping acrobats performing death-defying feats, processions of gift-bearers, and mysterious religious scenes whose exact meaning continues to elude us. The fresco known as the Prince of the Lilies shows a male figure wearing an elaborate crown of lilies and feathers, striding confidently among flowering plants, embodying the grace and sophistication of Minoan elite culture. The Persian fresco depicts a woman with curly hair, prominent eyes, and rouged lips, her modern appearance so striking that French archaeologists gave her this nickname, imagining she could walk the streets of Paris without seeming out of place. But perhaps no artistic motif is more iconic, more mysterious, or more debated than the bull-leaping frescoes, which show young athletes, both male and female identifiable by their lighter skin tone in keeping with ancient Mediterranean artistic conventions, grasping the horns of charging bulls and somersaulting over their backs. Scholars argue whether this depicts an actual sport, a religious ritual, a rite of passage, or artistic symbolism rather than literal practice, though the consistency of the imagery across multiple sites and media, frescoes, seals, and sculptures, suggests this was indeed a real activity, however dangerous and however hedged about with ritual significance it might have been. The bull clearly held tremendous importance in Minoan religion and culture, appearing not only in the leaping scenes but also in the form of bull-shaped ritual vessels called rita, in the horns of consecration that crowned Minoan buildings, and in countless seals and artistic representations. This prominence naturally connects to the Greek legend of the Minotaur, suggesting that later Greeks preserved some memory of Minoan bull worship, though transforming it through the lens of their own cultural values into a monster that must be destroyed by a Greek hero. Minoan religion remains one of the most challenging aspects of their culture to understand, for we have temples and shrines, ritual objects and sacred symbols, artistic depictions of religious ceremonies, but no texts explaining what these people actually believed, no mythology preserved in their own words, no theology or cosmology written in their undeciphered language. What we can say is that Minoan religion appears to have focused on female deities, with a prominent goddess or perhaps multiple goddesses associated with nature, fertility, and wild animals, often depicted with snakes, birds, or poppies, wearing elaborate tiered skirts, and bare-breasted in a style that shocked Victorian archaeologists but appears to have been standard sacred attire. The famous snake goddess figurines found at Knossos, faience statuettes showing women holding serpents aloft in each hand, have become iconic symbols of Minoan religion, though debates continue about whether they represent goddesses, priestesses, or worshippers. Some scholars argue for a single great goddess with multiple aspects. Others propose a pantheon of distinct deities. Still others suggest the Minoans focused more on sacred places and ritual practices than on anthropomorphic gods, finding divinity in caves, mountain peaks, springs, and groves. Peak sanctuaries, shrines located on mountaintops where votive offerings accumulated over centuries, to the Cretan landscape, suggesting the Minoans climbed to high places to commune with the divine, perhaps to feel closer to the sky, perhaps to achieve altered states of consciousness in the thin mountain air. Cave sanctuaries like the Kamars Cave and the Aegean Cave, where later Greeks would locate the birthplace of Zeus, contained deposits of pottery, figurines, and other offerings spanning millennia, indicating these were sacred spaces long before classical Greek religion emerged. The discovery of linear tablets and inscriptions throughout Minoan Crete proves these people had developed writing, a significant achievement that places them among the literate civilizations of the Bronze Age. Unfortunately, unlike Linear B, the script used by later Mycenaean Greeks, which was deciphered in the 1950s by Michael Ventris, Linear A remains unread, its language unknown, its contents silent, preserving the Minoans' secrets in approximately 90 distinct signs representing syllables, plus logograms representing whole words or concepts. What we know of Linear A comes from about 1,400 inscriptions, primarily found on clay tablets, though also appearing on stone libation tables, metal objects, and pottery. The tablets appear to be administrative documents, recording economic transactions, inventories, and distributions of goods, suggesting a palace-centered economy with bureaucratic control over production and trade. Though without being able to read the actual words, our understanding remains frustratingly incomplete. The Minoans were not isolated on their island but engaged actively with the wider Bronze Age world, establishing trade networks that brought them into contact with Egypt, Cyprus, the Levantine coast, Anatolia, and the Greek mainland. Minoan pottery has been found in Egyptian tombs, Egyptian artifacts appear in Cretan palaces, and the artistic styles of both cultures show mutual influence, indicating regular contact and exchange. The volcanic island of Thera, modern Santorini, located about 70 miles north of Crete, was home to a Minoan colony or heavily influenced settlement at Akrotiri, where volcanic ash preserved an entire Bronze Age town like a Mediterranean Pompeii. The sophisticated wall paintings found there, showing ships, landscapes, wildlife, and human activities, provide invaluable insights into Minoan life and confirm the extent of their maritime reach. The explosion of Thera around 1600 BCE was one of the most cataclysmic volcanic eruptions in human history, ejecting an estimated 24 cubic miles of material, collapsing the center of the island into a caldera, generating tsunamis that would have devastated the northern coast of Crete, and spreading ash across the eastern Mediterranean. The eruption's impact on Minoan civilization has been intensely debated, with some scholars arguing it caused immediate collapse, others pointing out that Minoan culture continued to flourish for more than a century afterward, though perhaps weakened, disrupted, and eventually unable to recover from the combination of natural disaster and other mounting pressures. The relationship between the Minoans and the Mycenaean Greeks of the mainland introduces another layer of complexity to our understanding. The Mycenaeans, an Indo-European people who spoke an early form of Greek, began to rise to prominence around 1600 BCE, developing their own palace-centered civilization on the Greek mainland at sites like Mycenae, Tiryns, and Palace, building massive fortifications of Cyclopean masonry, depositing rich grave goods in shaft graves and tholos tombs, and clearly, being influenced by and interacting with Minoan culture. The evidence suggests that around 1450 BCE, a dramatic change occurred on Crete. Most of the major Minoan palaces were destroyed or damaged, though Knossos survived and appears to have been reoccupied, and here the plot thickens, for the tablets found in this final phase of Knossos are written in Linear B, the Mycenaean Greek script, suggesting that Greeks from the mainland had taken control of the palace, whether through conquest, gradual infiltration, or perhaps invitation to serve as mercenary rulers is debated among scholars. This Mycenaean presence at Knossos lasted until approximately 1380 to 1370 BCE when the palace was finally destroyed by fire, never to be rebuilt, marking the end of the palatial period and the beginning of a long decline. Smaller settlements continued to be inhabited, Cretan culture persisted in modified form, but the great days of Minoan civilization were over, its palaces abandoned, its writing forgotten, its trade networks disrupted, until eventually it faded into legend, preserved only in distorted form in Greek mythology. The question of what caused the end of Minoan civilization has generated numerous theories, each with its advocates and critics. The Thera eruption once seemed the obvious culprit, but chronological problems emerged as scholars refined the dating, showing the eruption occurred well before the final palatial destructions, though it might have contributed to longer-term decline. Mycenaean conquest remains a popular explanation, with Greek warriors seizing Crete either in a single campaign or through gradual takeover, exploiting Minoan weakness in the aftermath of natural disasters. The evidence of Linear B tablets at Knossos certainly indicates Mycenaean control, and later Greek legends about King Minos extracting tribute from Athens before Theseus ended his dominance might preserve memories of this power dynamic, though inverted to make Greeks the victims rather than the conquerors. Earthquakes devastate the seismically active Aegean region periodically, and evidence exists for major seismic events around 1450 BCE that could have damaged or destroyed palaces. Combined with fires that could spread rapidly through Bronze Age buildings with wooden elements and stored oil, earthquakes provide a plausible natural explanation, though this doesn't fully account for why Minoan civilization never recovered as it had from earlier destructions. Internal political collapse, social upheaval, economic disruption, environmental degradation, climate change, plague, or some combination of all these factors might have undermined Minoan society from within, making it vulnerable to external shocks. The palace-centered economy, with its concentration of resources and administrative control, might have been fragile despite its sophistication, unable to adapt when circumstances changed. The reality is probably that no single cause explains the end of Minoan civilization, but rather a convergence of disasters, what archaeologists call a perfect storm, where natural catastrophes weaken the society, making it vulnerable to conquest or unable to maintain its complex economic and political systems, leading to a cascade of failures from which recovery proved impossible. After the palaces fell, what remained? Small settlements continued to be inhabited in the post-palatial period, roughly 1380 to 1100 BCE, but without the centralized administration, without the resources for monumental building projects, without the writing that had recorded economic transactions, Cretan culture survived in diminished form. The island became increasingly influenced by Mycenaean culture as Greeks settled there in larger numbers, until eventually Crete became simply another part of the Greek world, its distinctive Minoan heritage absorbed, transformed, or forgotten. When classical Greek civilization emerged centuries later, after the Dark Ages that followed the Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE, the Greeks of the historical period knew Crete had been important in the past. Homer mentions 100-citied Crete and describes King Minos as the son of Zeus, ruling with great power and wisdom, though The Minotaur story presents a darker image of Cretan power demanding human sacrifice. The historian Thucydides, writing in the 5th century BCE, claimed that Minos was a historical figure who established the first thalassocracy or sea empire, clearing the seas of pirates and controlling the Aegean through naval power. Whether Thucydides had access to genuine historical traditions or was speculating based on legend and logic remains uncertain, but his account influenced later Greek and Roman writers who accepted Minoan sea power as historical fact. The Minotaur legend itself, told in various versions by multiple ancient authors, contains elements that might preserve genuine memories of Minoan Crete. The tribute of youths sent from Athens to Crete could reflect actual political dominance. The labyrinth might be a folk memory of the complex palace at Knossos with its maze-like layout. The bull might recall the prominence of bulls in Minoan religion and the dangerous sport of bull leaping, and even the half-human monster might be a distorted memory of priests wearing bull masks during religious ceremonies. The story of Daedalus, the master craftsman who built the labyrinth, then escaped Crete with his son Icarus using wings of feathers and wax, only to have Icarus fly too close to the sun and fall into the sea, has been read as a parable about the dangers of hubris, but it might also preserve memories of Minoan technological sophistication, perhaps even their knowledge of sailing and navigation, transformed through mythology into the impossible dream of human flight. Arthur Evans' reconstruction work at Knossos, while revealing the site to the world and capturing public imagination, has been criticized by later archaeologists for being too extensive, too creative, too influenced by early 20th century aesthetic sensibilities rather than rigorous adherence to evidence. Evans used reinforced concrete to rebuild portions of the palace, painted reconstructed walls in colors he thought appropriate, and made interpretive decisions that scholars now question, creating a site that is part ancient Minoan, part Edwardian imagination, beautiful and evocative but perhaps misleading about what the Bronze Age palace actually looked like. Despite these controversies, Evans' work at Knossos and the subsequent excavations at other Minoan sites by Greek, British, French, Italian, and American archaeologists have revolutionized our understanding of European prehistory. Before the discovery of Minoan civilization, scholars believed that culture and civilization flowed from the Near East and Egypt into a barbarous Europe, with classical Greece representing the first truly European civilization. But the Minoans proved that sophisticated Bronze Age cultures had flourished in Europe 2,000 years before the Parthenon was built. Modern archaeological techniques, remote sensing, underwater archaeology, scientific dating methods, residue analysis, ancient DNA studies, and computer modeling continue to refine and expand our knowledge. Excavations in Minoan towns like Gornia, Palicastro, and Mochlos reveal how ordinary people lived, not just the elites in their palaces, showing us houses, workshops, streets, and daily life, while careful study of preserved organic remains tells us what the Minoans ate, what crops they grew, what animals they herded, and how they exploited the resources of land and sea. The Minoans cultivated olives for oil, grapes for wine, barley and wheat for bread, pulses and vegetables, while keeping sheep for wool, goats for milk, pigs and cattle for meat, and they gathered wild resources including fish, shellfish, game, nuts, and fruits. Evidence from linear B tablets from mainland Mycenaean palaces, which likely reflects similar practices in Minoan Crete, reveals complex palace economies with specialized workers including farmers, herders, shepherds, textile workers, bronzesmiths, goldsmiths, potters, masons, carpenters, perfume makers, and many others, all supported by and contributing to the palace-centered redistribution system. Minoan pottery evolved through distinct styles that archaeologists use to establish chronology. The Kamars ware of the Middle Minoan period features elegant shapes decorated with white and red designs on a dark background, creating striking contrasts, often depicting flowers, spirals, and abstract patterns, while the late Minoan marine-style pottery shows octopi, fish, dolphins, and shells naturalistically rendered, their tentacles, fins and bodies flowing across the vessel's surfaces, expressing the Minoans' intimate connection with the sea that surrounded and sustained them. Stone vases carved from colorful stones like serpentine, marble, limestone, and obsidian demonstrate remarkable craftsmanship, with some vessels having walls less than a millimeter thick, so delicate they seem impossible to have created with Bronze Age tools. The harvester's vase from Aegean Triada, carved from steatite, shows a procession of men carrying agricultural tools, singing and laughing, their individual faces full of character and life, providing a rare glimpse of ordinary people rather than gods, rulers, or ceremonial scenes. Minoan metalwork includes not only practical tools and weapons but also elaborate jewelry and ceremonial objects. Gold signet rings engraved with complex religious scenes, gold necklaces strung with amethyst and rock crystal beads, bronze figurines of worshippers with their hands raised in prayer, and the famous gold pendant from Malia showing two bees depositing honey into a comb. The insects rendered with such precision that their species can be identified, all testify to the skills of Minoan craftspeople. The question of Minoan social structure and politics remains frustratingly unclear in the absence of readable texts. Were the palaces ruled by kings, as later Greek tradition suggests with King Minos? Were they theocratic states governed by priest-kings or even priestesses, given the apparent prominence of female religious figures? Were they controlled by merchant oligarchies, wealthy families who derived power from trade? Or did they have some other form of government unknown to us, perhaps something more collective than the autocratic monarchies of Egypt and the Near East? The architectural evidence suggests significant social stratification, with elite residents in palaces and wealthy villas enjoying luxurious accommodations, fine art, imported goods, and specialized services, while commoners lived in simpler houses, worked in fields and workshops, and had access to fewer luxury goods, though even modest Minoan houses often show sophisticated construction and amenities like drainage systems that would not become common in Europe again until the modern era. The role of women in Minoan society has sparked particular interest and debate, especially given the prominence of female figures in Minoan art and religion. The bare-breasted costume depicted in frescoes and figurines, the important religious roles suggested by priestess imagery, and the generally sophisticated appearance of women in Minoan art led some scholars to propose that Minoan Crete was a matriarchal or at least matrilineal society, though others caution against projecting modern concepts onto ancient evidence and point out that religious importance does not necessarily translate to political or social power. What seems clear is that Minoan women participated in public life in ways that would have been unusual in many other ancient societies. They attended sporting events like bull leaping, they appeared in processions and ceremonies, they worked in textile production, which was economically important, and at least some women enjoyed high status, whether as priestesses, aristocrats, or perhaps even rulers, though whether the snake goddess figures and other female religious imagery represent actual political power or religious ideology disconnected from secular authority remains uncertain. The Minoans' influence extended beyond their own time and place, shaping the development of Mycenaean civilization on the Greek mainland, which adopted and adapted Minoan artistic styles, architectural techniques, writing systems, and religious elements. The Mycenaeans, who eventually came to dominate the Aegean world, who sailed to Troy if we believe Homer's account, and whose culture would provide the foundation for later Greek civilization, were in many ways the heirs of Minoan achievement, though they developed their own distinct character, more martial, more hierarchical, more interested in fortifications and warfare than the apparently peace-loving Minoans. When Mycenaean civilization collapsed around 1200 BCE, victim of the mysterious sea peoples, internal warfare, climate change, or whatever combination of factors brought down the Bronze Age world from Greece to Egypt, the knowledge of Minoan civilization was lost, preserved only in distorted form in Greek mythology. Linear be continued briefly before it too was forgotten, not to be read again for 3,000 years, and the great palaces lay abandoned, buried under accumulating soil, occupied occasionally by later settlements, but their glory days forgotten until Arthur Evans brought them back to light. The rediscovery of Minoan civilization captured the imagination of the early 20th century, coinciding with the birth of modernism in art and architecture. Artists like Picasso and Matisse were influenced by Minoan art's flowing lines and natural forms, while architects saw in the Minoans a precedent for functional design, open floor plans, and integration with landscape, elements that would become central to modern architecture. The Minoans also influenced popular culture, appearing in novels, films, and television shows, though usually in highly romanticized or fantasized form. The idea of a sophisticated, peaceful, goddess-worshipping society destroyed by natural catastrophe has proven irresistible to various ideological movements, from feminists celebrating supposed matriarchy to New Age spiritualists imagining Atlantis-like wisdom, though serious scholars caution against projecting our own desires and fantasies onto the fragmentary evidence. The possible connection between Minoan Crete and Plato's Atlantis has intrigued speculators since the Thera eruption was first connected to the Minoan decline. Plato, writing in the 4th century BCE, described Atlantis as a powerful island civilization that existed 9,000 years before his time, a land of great wealth and advanced technology that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of catastrophic destruction. And while most scholars dismiss this as philosophical allegory, rather than historical account, the parallels to Minoan Crete, an island civilization destroyed by volcanic catastrophe, are striking enough that some argue Plato might have been preserving garbled memories of real events, though the chronology and details don't match. What can we conclude about Minoan civilization? This culture that flourished for more than 1,000 years, built remarkable palaces, created stunning art, developed writing, established far-flung trade networks, and then vanished, leaving only ruins and legends. We can say with confidence that the Minoans were among the first European civilizations, contemporaries of the great Bronze Age cultures of the Near East, and in some ways their equals in sophistication. We can say they were master sailors and traders who connected the Eastern Mediterranean world, spreading goods, ideas, and influences. We can say they were talented artists whose work still moves us today with its grace, naturalism, and joy in life. We can say they were innovative architects and engineers who built impressive structures and developed practical technologies. We can say they had complex religious beliefs focused on female deities and natural spaces, though the details remain mysterious. And we can say they influenced the later Greeks who would go on to create classical civilization. But much remains unknown, perhaps unknowable without the decipherment of linear A. We don't know what the Minoans called themselves, what language they spoke, what stories they told, what songs they sang, what they believed about the cosmos, death, and the meaning of existence, what political conflicts divided them, what personal dramas played out in their palaces, what hopes and fears animated their daily lives, for they left us their things but not their voices, their images but not their words, their ruins but not their history as they themselves would tell it. The contrast between myth and reality in Minoan Crete reveals both the power and limitations of archaeological science. We have recovered the material reality of this civilization, measured their buildings, analyzed their artifacts, mapped their trade networks, dated their phases, reconstructed their economy, but without texts we can read, without their own accounts of their lives and beliefs, we can never fully bridge the gap between then and now, never completely separate the real from the legendary, never definitively answer whether King Minos was a historical ruler, a title like pharaoh, or pure mythology. Perhaps the most appropriate way to understand Minoan civilization is as a liminal culture, existing at the boundary between prehistory and history, between the preliterate and literate worlds, between the mythological past of legend and the historical past of documents. They developed writing, but it remains unread. They built monuments that survived but whose purposes are debated. They influenced later Greeks who preserved distorted memories in mythology. They created art that speaks across millennia but in a language we struggle to understand. The legacy of Minoan Crete extends far beyond academic archaeology. The image of this sophisticated Bronze Age civilization, with its elegant art, Its apparent lack of militarism compared to other ancient societies, its prominent goddesses and priestesses, and its mysterious end, has become part of our collective cultural consciousness, a reminder that civilization is always more complex, more ancient, and more fragile than we might imagine, that advanced societies can disappear leaving only fragments, and that beneath the myths and legends we inherit often lie genuine historical experiences, transformed by time and retelling but preserving kernels of truth. As we stand today before the reconstructed walls of Knossos, walking through corridors where Minoan feet trod for 1,000 years ago, gazing at frescoes showing people whose names we will never know, we are confronted with the mystery of the past, the humbling realization that entire civilizations can vanish almost without trace, that languages can be forgotten, that sophisticated cultures can decline and fall, and that only through patient archaeological work, careful scientific analysis, and imaginative yet rigorous interpretation can we hope to recover something of what was lost. The Minoans remind us that our own civilization, with all its achievements and sophistication, its technology and knowledge, is not guaranteed to last forever, that future archaeologists might someday excavate our ruins and struggle to understand who we were and what we believed, just as we struggle to understand Knossos and its people. They remind us to be humble in the face of time's vastness, to recognize the limits of our knowledge even as we push to expand those limits, and to appreciate the fragile thread of cultural memory that connects us to our ancestors. In the end, Minoan Crete stands as one of history's great enigmas, a civilization sophisticated enough to build palaces and develop writing, yet silent across the centuries, unable to speak to us in its own voice. A culture whose art suggests peace and prosperity, yet which ended in destruction and abandonment. A society real enough to leave behind countless artifacts, yet mythic enough to inspire legends of labyrinths and monsters that have lasted 3,000 years. The myth and reality of Minoan Crete cannot be fully separated, for each informs and shapes the other. The archaeological reality gives substance to the myths, while the myths provide a framework, however distorted, for understanding the reality. Arthur Evans excavating Knossos could not escape the shadow of the Minotaur legend, and we who study the Minoans today still find ourselves drawn to questions inspired by mythology even as we rely on scientific evidence. Perhaps that is as it should be, for the Minoans themselves seem to have lived in a world where the boundaries between sacred and secular, between natural and supernatural, between human and divine were more fluid than our modern categories allow. To understand them, insofar as we can understand a people whose language we cannot read and whose beliefs we must infer, we must be willing to think in ways that combine rational analysis with imaginative sympathy, scientific rigor with mythic resonance. The story of Minoan Crete is ultimately a human story, a tale of people who built a sophisticated culture in a beautiful but challenging environment, who created art that still moves us, who developed technologies we can admire, who traded with distant lands, who worshipped gods whose names we don't know, who raised children and planted crops and celebrated festivals and mourned their dead, who experienced victories and defeats, who adapted to challenges and failed to adapt to others, and who finally disappeared into the mists of time, leaving us to puzzle over their remains and wonder who they really were. As archaeological techniques advance, as new discoveries are made, as interdisciplinary approaches combining archaeology, linguistics, genetics, climate science, and other fields shed new light on old questions, our understanding of Minoan civilization will continue to evolve. Perhaps someday Linear A will be deciphered, allowing the Minoans finally to speak to us in their own words, or perhaps new archaeological discoveries will revolutionize our understanding once again as Knossos did more than a century ago. But until then, we work with what we have, piecing together the puzzle, separating myth from reality where we can, and acknowledging the mysteries that remain. The Minoans built their palaces, created their art, lived their lives, and passed into legend. But through the work of archaeologists and scholars, They have been partially reborn, their civilization recovered from oblivion, their achievements recognized, their place in human history secured. They remind us that history is not just written in texts but preserved in stones and sherds, in walls and frescoes, in the material traces that survive when memories fade, and that through careful study of these traces, we can recover voices that time had silenced, can glimpse lives long ended, can understand, however imperfectly, civilizations that rose and fell thousands of years before we were born, proving that while death comes to all individuals and even to entire cultures, the human story continues, and our efforts to understand our ancestors honor both them and ourselves, connecting past and present in a chain of memory and knowledge that defines what it means to be human.